Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And for those of you watching this on demand later, welcome to you too. We are so glad that you are here. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights engagement and enforcement agency. Tonight, we highlight Love for Immigrants, a social space for immigrant support. Love for Immigrants aims to connect immigrants to their communities as respected, loved, and heard individuals by sharing their stories through art and storytelling. Tonight will be a wonderful mix of both art and storytelling, and will also serve as an introduction to their upcoming art exhibit, Awakening, Transforming Experiences, which is on next week at Home Gallery in Washington, D.C. Our first guest tonight is the founder of Love for Immigrants, Maribel Rodriguez. She grew up in New York City as the daughter of an immigrant parent from Colombia and of an American parent from Puerto Rico, which has its unique culture and in some ways similar experience to the immigrant experience. She studied photography as an undergraduate at the Rochester Institute of Technology, then went on to study social enterprise at American University for her master's. The idea for Maribel's budding organization, Love for Immigrants, came during her graduate capstone project out of the desire to see immigrant stories depicted in humane, dignified ways. Love for Immigrants seeks to create a community and platform for artists to create and showcase their work, positively shaping the narrative around immigrant topics. The project was founded in 2017, and Love for Immigrants has had two main larger scale shows, the virtual art healing speaker series in 2020, which considered themes of identity and healing, and Unweaved Stories in 2021, which explored themes of family, storytelling, and weaving memories, and was facilitated by VR. Maribel was a member of the youth curatorial group for MoMA's exhibit From Grunge to Grace in 2008, and she also served as a mentor at LearnServe International from 2018 to 2019. Maribel currently works in public library administration in Maryland. So Maribel, thank you so much for joining us. It's just a thrill to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Kyla. I really appreciate the intro. And I do have, if you have a moment, a slide deck to share, present to everyone.
Okay, I'll pull that out.
Thank you. So I'll start. I invite you all to close your eyes for a couple of seconds. Now, when you're ready, imagine. Imagine a world where immigrant stories are told with dignity and respect. Now that you have this imagine in your mind, open your eyes and I'll introduce myself and what we do. Immigration for me is not just a topic. It is about my community. My name is Maribel Rodriguez or Maribel Rodriguez. Either one is fine. And I'm the founder of Love for Immigrants. Like Kyla said, I grew up in Brooklyn and now I live in the DMV area, proud of it. So Love for Immigrants connects immigrants through our exhibitions and stories. What I really like here is this Maya Angelou quote that I want to share with you all. Great art belongs to all people, all the time. Indeed, it is made for the people, by the people. And I think this is at the heart of what we do, is that feeling for everyone to use art as a power to either change themselves or change the world around them. So, I'm not there yet. My bad. In 2018, as I was walking around the American University campus, I found posters with hateful words towards immigrants. And then I realized that not everyone had the privilege, as I did, to grow up with people from around the world and to see the beauty of so many cultures, including those of my parents. This is just a local example of a wider global phenomenon. So, this negative rhetoric, it persists because politicians often use immigrants as scapegoats instead of addressing the real issues of inefficiency, lack of action, and corruption. And this is a nice example. At least it backs up one of my claims. Media messages were often powerful reminders and I want to read this quote, to immigrants that they do not belong and that they are unwanted. The media plays a major role in shaping the perception that the public has on immigrants, but also how immigrants see themselves in the eyes of the public. Not yet. Okay. So even when, let's say, an organization that's maybe a nonprofit or community based volunteer run, they want to talk about migrants and help immigrants and immigrants and refugees, what happens sometimes is that they depict the community members as suffering individuals, and the suffering may be real, but also what happens is they neglect the contributions and the value of people and their cultures. No matter how much you may be suffering in a given moment, there's a culture that most of us are proud of and there or appreciate, even if there's some unfortunate things in it. And there is a contribution that each culture has to the fabric of our world that needs to be acknowledged and valued. So we address how negative depictions of immigrants have impacted immigrants' lives and their sense of self-worth. Our platform serves as a solution to not only showcase how beautiful immigrants' ideas, creativity, culture, and experiences are, but to also display the stories and artwork of already empowered immigrant creatives who want to take their narrative back. We will amplify their voices. We will be a space for belonging and collective healing. So here, you'll see one of our photo essays, because in 2017, when we began, we started with 8 photo essays. So one of them was solidarity, which you see here, some of the photographs, and the other theme was life journeys. And life journeys really showcased through oral history and photography, um, just variety of challenges, um, aspirations, what even made the person want to immigrate. um and you realize love is a big one. Love is a big one. um
Oh,
and
I want to talk more about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you also see, with solidarity, is more of the impact that nonprofit organizations in the area helping immigrants and documenting some pieces of their work. And so in 2018, what I'm really happy with is that we had the opportunity to collaborate with Ayuda here in DC, or well, not here exactly, but in the DMV area. And we displayed our photo essays, our very humble photo essays, but with a lot of dignity, at their fundraising gala. So people got a chance to see it and to feel inspired to donate to a really great cause, because they are just do great work in the area. Um, and so at this point, we recognized after this that capturing stories was great, but it was only through one lens, and it was only through my lens. And that's problematic. So then we needed to find a way to capture stories in multiple lenses and perspectives. And that's where we wanted to make it more collaborative and invite multiple immigrant artists, so that this first pilot, to see how it would go and what kind of perspectives they would share. So in 2020, we gathered a team of volunteers and created an art healing speaker series and online exhibit where we engaged 16 artists, 6 mental health experts and healers, excuse me, and we included different um, mediums in this one, a lot more than in recent times as well. And the artist healing theme and virtual format really was a great moment to connect people during it would happen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, and with this, at the end, we realized that collective healing was possible through the arts. And because a lot of the artists, that was one of the questions I asked: how did they use art to heal their in their life and to heal themselves, and to teach other people that they can do the same thing, and create their own way, and that we could help immigrants, or at least they can help as well, because we're all in this together. So it's not a one-way street. Um, so in 2021, we wanted to see if we can do a bigger story. So we collaborated with Occupy White Walls to do a virtual reality gallery, and we had a theme called Unweave Stories. And this one, we really did try to tie the entire artwork from different artists together to create one story, which was quite difficult, but The curator did it. And here I just have one example of one work called Leaf Mask by Maria Escalona, who's a photo performance, is a photo performance. And we displayed this work. And this explores the artist's cultural identities. She's Venezuelan and indigenous, has indigenous roots, and it also explores the relationship, um, explores it through this plantain leaf, that mask that she has. Um, so Oop, not yet. So we did these three pilots: virtual art healing, speaker series, artist Sunday, which is one I didn't mention quite yet, but it was another collaboration, a showcase, and unweave stories. And we were confident that we could continue this work. So I definitely have to say that we accomplished this work first and foremost because of our global partners and our team of volunteers. Um, this is one of our partners who became a collaborator, but he started as a volunteer. Um, and in Pakistan, what he did was he took that virtual reality gallery, and when he started his education consortium, he decided to use the virtual reality gallery in the education classes and tell the teachers about it and have it incorporated into those lesson plans, and inspire the students in a place where art is not quite as big or as normalized. Um, and then we also have Malenzi Tony, who continues to volunteer with us and now is leading our pilot Love for Immigrants Uganda chapter. So he took the initiative, found the funders, and is actually started with the radio talk. And now, actually, coming up tomorrow, I believe he's doing his 2-day event called Base Camp, where he plans to inspire inclusive futures through storytelling, art, design principles, sign language, and co-creation. And so he's the one in the team that's constantly pushing for inclusivity and making sure that we have that. Trying not to talk too much. Okay. We also have just this amazing group of volunteers, and this is not all the people who volunteered for us. It's just a small summary. But we've had Wendy, who helps with these amazing op-eds since she was in high school, and now she's in college. And we've had Ifunaya, our honorary board member. Um, we also have Siddhartha, who helps. He's not quite here yet, but he's helping a lot this year and last year with our website development. And Salome Cosmic, who started with us as an artist in 2020. She then was part of our artist advisory board, which we had for a year in 2021, and they guided the whole thing. And now she's our solo curator for 2022-2023. So this is our amazing team. And there are more. And Bethany, I can't forget about Bethany.
Yeah, I
Bethany, okay, she's been there. Yeah.
I was gonna say, can I jump in? Because I have a question that has just I'm so interested by. And you mentioned the Love for Immigrants Uganda chapter. So is this like Love for Immigrants? Is it global?
So I don't say it's global because it's not officially global. The the collaborations abroad are pilot projects, and they're starting very small with people that were already a part of us, like part of the organization or the initiative when we were initiative, and now it's really kind of picking up in Uganda and um, in Pakistan. It's project based, depending on what we can offer and where we can collaborate.
Mhm.
So it's somewhere between collaboration and growing. So it's in our pathway for growth.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
But I'm always looking for people, and people tell me, and not everybody commits. But I had some people a while back said, "I want to start this in Colombia." I'm like, "Let's do it." People sometimes want to start something, and I'm very open to it, but that I already know, and it's just bad timing sometimes. But I'm very
Mhm.
open to growing, as long as I have someone that's committed and is able to take the lead. Um, and we have just these amazing people who are volunteering their time, their effort, and really showing this amazing leadership and figuring out how to incorporate what they're doing with what I'm doing,
Mhm.
and starting something new. So it's a in between, more of a collaborative thing. So thank you for the question. Yeah. Yeah, I can't forget about Bethany. I got to go back to her because she's been there since day one. She's been there since day one, and she has been helping us thinking about our monitoring and evaluation, which, as you may know, is a complicated piece. Something so you can't really touch storytelling and how it impacts an art. They're harder to measure the impact of that. And so yeah, and website development. So great group of teams globally and here. Um, so if I may, let's see. So our amazing community basically is was making it all possible for us to reach our massive transformative purpose of connecting people to their humanity and to those of others through dignified narratives for a more loving, creative, and compassionate world. So, as you see here, well, in my opinion, these pilots were successful, and
Mm.
we have engaged 30 artists through our exhibits in not a whole lot of time. And we have many of whom these artists are many of whom are artist activists, and we've had a little bit less than 6,000 total website views, and this was as of May 2022, so it could be more now. And we've connected people to our online offerings from across 76 countries. Now, every country didn't have the same number of people, but I was amazed to see at least one person for a lot of countries joined in. Um, and now we're ready for our next happening, which is this Saturday. And that's the exciting thing I want to talk about. Today we have so for Love for Immigrants 2023, the theme is Awakening Transforming Experiences, and it aims to demonstrate how humanity can feel love and joy more fully, as well as to expand all that we are. And this is an in person exhibit on Saturday, April 1st. And this will be at Home Gallery at 2000 L Street, Washington, D.C., from 3 to 5 p.m. But we also have a hybrid aspect. So we have an online aspect, and that one is through Occupy White Walls again. And so I'm happy to share more. The date is to be determined. Sometime after we do the closing of the in-person exhibit. So the opening, if I may, again, the opening will have brief performances, visual fine art, inspiring visual fine art, and light snacks. And this was all made possible because in 2021, although we took a break, sorry, 2022, we took a little break from the exhibit planning part. We did go through an accelerator program called Authority Group, which is an accelerator program for nonprofits or for those who want to be a nonprofit. And we pitched and won a small grant from the Russell Gibbs Foundation, which was huge for us, and that made this whole um, thing possible. Basically, this beautiful exhibit possible. So, with that, today, what I really want to mention is that I'm pleased to have the chance to highlight two of our Love for Immigrants artists, Manju and Zenia. And Manju here was actually part of a previous showcase called Artist Sunday back in 2021. And one thing a lot of people may not know is that in part or in great part, the theme was inspired by Manju's work and another artist who we from the beginning I said, let me try to be as collaborative as possible and see who wants to have a say in the decision making process. And that theme was created because looking at the work, the pattern that they both had in it was spirituality and that artivism, and so that um, healing aspect came through with the theme. It started with catharsis. That word is not so great and not used in all the countries, so we kind of shifted through to a new word, awakening, transforming experiences. Again, with more artist feedback from different people that I know. And what's really interesting, if I can share quickly about their take on the theme, Manja's take on the theme is about reclaiming spirituality, celebrating heritage, and also experiences of injustice. Is something that you see manifest in the artwork. And then Zenia's take on the theme of transforming, awakening ex, experiences is expressing feelings through art and using those thoughts and feelings that come from engaging with current events as an inspiration to paint. So here with that, I will then leave the artists to then introduce themselves, or unless Kyla would like to continue that part.
I've only done 100 of these, and I did talk while I was muted. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring your slide deck down and introduce the artist just briefly, and then I'd like to ask some questions. I will say for those people who are watching, whether you're watching live right now or you're watching on demand later, throughout the conversation, I will be putting links in the chat as well as on screen, so you can find Love for Immigrants, you can find the artists, you can learn about their work, follow them. Who we have with us, in addition to Maribel, is we have Xenia Gray, who is a contemporary figurative artist who enjoys working with mixed media, including oil, acrylic, and charcoal. Fascinated by unexpressed feelings and by things left unsaid, Xenia explores emotion through paintings of the human body. Growing up after the Soviet Union's collapse, she got her sense of color and aesthetics from an industrial city in Siberia. Xenia graduated from art school at 16 and continued her art education in St. Petersburg, Russia. Upon achieving an MA in advertisement design at St. Petersburg State University of Technology and Design, Xenia moved to the US in 2010 after 8 years of studying and working in the digital design field. She currently resides, works, and creates in Washington, D.C. Xenia brings her knowledge of design, branding, and technology into her work in the UI UX field, and her work can be found at her Instagram account, which I'm going to put up on the screen for you. And in the chat. And our other guest that we have is Manju, who's a Washington, D.C. based artist who brings wonder, skepticism, and gratitude of an outsider immigrant to her work. Her acrylic what is kintsugi?
Kintsugi, it's the Japanese art of fixing broken. So you don't use and movement, and so you're not trying to hide it, and it's
right. Okay. All right. So I apologize for interrupting, but I realized I needed to get clarification on that. Glass and mixed media pieces, and they stand at the intersection of science and spirituality, approaching socioeconomic experience and political perspective with vulnerability and emotion. Born in India, Manju's personal journeys as diplomat, yogini, and grandchild of refugees are woven into her intersectional explorations of resistance, joy, and empowerment. Manju's use of bright, bold, assertive color protests binaries. In a world that urges neat self-definition in black and white, she uses vibrance to push back. Manju's work is featured in several national exhibits, including Best of Women Show in 2022 and the Department of State's Art and Embassies collection. Her work is part of private collections in Lisbon, London, Dubai, Erbil, and Washington, D.C. And I will also be sharing Manju's links in the chat section where you're watching, so you'll be able to learn from both of you. So it is really a pleasure for me to have both of you with us tonight. And I wanted to start by asking you, one of the things that when we were talking, I was talking to Maribel, she described both of you as being artivists. And so activists who use art for activism. And so I was wondering if you could each, and maybe I'll start with you, Xenia, could just talk about what that means for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. And thank you for introduction, Kyla. Yeah, I'm realizing why two of us are invited because our art, Manju and my art, is so opposite. My art is so industrial colors, and Manju is completely different. So for me, when you say artivist, basically because of my art, I can't even go to my country. The reason is because last year, as you all familiar, the war has started with Ukraine and Russia, and I am from Russia, and my political views do not stand with Russian government. So last year, when I had my solo show, I tried to cancel it because my show took place right after the war started. So it's not something I could focus on. I couldn't wrap my head around around all what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't even think about marketing or promoting my art or my exhibition because I mean, people are dying. Like, what art, you know? So then I thought more about it, and I was like, well, what impact could I do? So I painted a few pieces that were inspired by that, by the struggle, and I was also very outspoken. I took a risk. I took my own risk, even though my family in Russia advised me not to. But I did it anyway. I couldn't be silent, and I did. I was outspoken, and I said that I stand with Ukraine, basically. And now I'm just scared to go back because I just don't want to be arrested, because it's out there in public, basically, that information. So yeah, that's kind of how I am fighting for human rights. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. And Manju?
So thank you so much for having me. This is really a pleasure. I think for me personally, as an immigrant, when I first came to the United States, we moved to New York, and I went to high school in Queens and Brooklyn, and I was very used to a very diverse world around me, and assumed that was all of America. And then once I went off to college and graduate school, it struck me how mistaken I was. The first question anybody ever has is always, where are you from? And when I would say I'm from New York, that was never enough of an answer. And I thought, okay, fair enough. I'm born in another country. I'm a citizen of this country, so much so that I work for the State Department. I represent the United States abroad. I justify our foreign policy abroad. But when I'm home, when I'm in the land that I adopted, in my homeland, I'm made to feel like I don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I realized that is not a unique experience at all. I also realized there are things that, as an outsider, I see about the United States, and sometimes they can be sort of naive and optimistic as well, right? Because I actively immigrated here. I believed that I would have, a better life, that my children would have a better life, that I would be free from a lot of very difficult things. We immigrated here because my mother was, a victim of domestic violence, and we literally came to the United States overnight. I remember I had one pair of jeans and a t-shirt, because everything else I owned was traditional clothing. And I realized, for me, it was such an emotional thing to leave everything behind and come, but it was supposed to be a place that was safe. It was supposed to be a place that was welcoming. And as much as I have had so many opportunities in this country, I've also seen some things that I can't unsee. And I think it's really important to highlight both those things, the things that I'm grateful for and the things that I'm disappointed with. And frankly, to use art as a way, sometimes I say that my paintings are sometimes screams. They're in bright color. They're about things that I'm like really unhappy about. So one of my pieces is called "The Resonance of George Perry Floyd," and that's the one that's hanging at our embassy in Togo, and it's part of the Art and Embassies program. That was very much about my personal protest of what it was like to live here in the United States. The series you're looking at, the Amrika series, I used that series to fundraise for this organization in our neighborhood, for a local food pantry, for women-run businesses. So it's not just about what people see when they see the paintings and what it evokes. That is important, but I think it's also important that my work is integrated into other people's lives in a way that is very, very it's concretely helpful. So, I love doing pieces as fundraisers, just because I find, and I mean, I've learned I love big, giant canvases. I realize that the reality is that most people don't have homes like that. People don't have the budget to buy that. So I pivoted to a tradition of miniatures, which is very much part of Indian art, because it was about that. I think art is for everyone. And I think that it's important that we all know that we can make a difference. So if you buy a piece that's this big, it's not just something that's going to bring you beauty. It also connects you with the people benefiting from that, from the fundraising of that painting. And yeah, I think for me, it's that very emotional, trying to make those connections. It's always lovely when someone looks at your piece and they're on the other side of the planet. They see it very, very differently. And I love this idea that when I paint, I teach yoga, especially when I do a commission, it's almost like my prayer for that person, right? It's all desires and good wishes for that person and for that family and for that home or that office or, that organization. To have those pieces there, it's like I'm giving a piece of my love over to them. And that will start conversations that will knit us together and make us connected in a very, very intimate way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to bring Maribel back up, and I'm hoping that the four of us can talk about Love for Immigrants and about the upcoming exhibition. I will say we actually have a question from the public, Maribel, which I'm going to put on the screen now, and then I'm going to follow up with a question of my own here. And so the question is wondering about the logo of Love for Immigrants, and just telling us about where that comes from.
Thank you. That's a great question. Actually, we had can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're great.
We had one through Impactionable. They used to be like a social enterprise, a gift of a consulting hour with a designer, a UX designer and from Jordan. And they loved us so much that they did our entire branding and they worked with us. They listened to the ideas, the vision. They looked at what we had done in the past, the art exhibit, and then the photo essays, I think, at that point. And then they helped us figure out a symbol for what we represent. And so in our original Love for Immigrants name, we used to have the number 4 in the middle. And they played around with that 4. And basically, if you look, it's really a butterfly, a very abstract butterfly. But it has the 4 inside the butterfly because it represents the 4 directions of movement. And for us, movement is a huge part of what we do because, well, on my personal level, I believe in the freedom of movement. And with Love for Immigrants, we are not necessarily directly saying that a political thing like that, but we are saying that think about the importance of the human right of being able to move, especially now with climate change, speeding up and all these things. So the four directions was really important. And then it was the butterfly. And the butterfly was inspired by another artist called Fabiana. And she was the one who really made the butterfly a symbol for the immigration cause. And through that inspiration, we decided to also use a butterfly symbol in our own way.
That's great.
Also representing the flight and the movement.
It is a beautiful logo. I have a question about, and then this logo discussion has brought me to use Xenia, because I wanted to ask you a lot about your work. And one of the things I know from your bio is that you're a UX or UI designer. And then we just heard about a UX designer working with the logo. And so I'm actually just wondering, as a little bit tangentially, if you can tell us what is that?
Oh, well, actually, UX designers don't work on logos. It's graphic designers. UX designers comes from its user experience. It's somebody who is who is responsible for basically the way an app or website works. So, like, where how it functions, what experience you get. It's all about user experience. Yeah. But
Okay.
but a lot of user experience designers, they come from graphic design field, so that's why probably.
That's probably the confusion there.
Yes, yes, yeah, 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 yeah.
So the other question I had for, actually I have this for all of you, but I'm going to start with you, Zinnia, is how did you find out about the Love for Immigrants project? How did you get involved?
To be honest, somebody from that organization reached out to me a while ago, and then it kind of, that name stuck with me. And then on Instagram, I don't know how, and how I saw open call. I saw an open call for that exhibition, and I decided to apply because it seems very relevant to me, because I am immigrant. And one of the reasons I moved to DC is because I know there are a lot of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
Because before DC, I lived in several cities, and I never felt comfortable enough.
Mm-hmm.
And in DC, like, people don't get surprised when I tell them where I'm from. Like, there are a lot of people from all over the world here,
Mm-hmm.
so I feel the most comfortable here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
How about you, Manju? How did you find out about the project?
So I actually found out because Maribel DM'd me on Instagram. I think I had like a piece up, and she reached out, and and I remember checking out the work and thinking, oh, this is how there was that project that you guys did on mental health, Maribel. That was really like it came at a time when there was so much happening here at home in terms of how immigrants were being portrayed, and it was. So I've had curators and gallerists and interior designers say, oh, can you make your work less political? And, like, these colors don't really sell. It would be better if, you tone them down. And I get that. Like, I get the aesthetic. But at the same time, if that's what I did for the sake of, commercial sales, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be, I'd lose the essence of what I was creating for. So it was really nice at that very opportune moment, right after someone had, given me this art critique, kind of like railing into me about how stuff was too bright. And, Love for Immigrants reached out and said, hey, we love your work, and we're doing this stuff with immigrants, and we're talking about mental health, because I think that, I do a lot of work related to mental health in my pieces. I had a whole series called Cake, which is just about the layers of emotion that we go through. We mentioned how, like, catharsis and this idea of movement, this idea of how immigration changes you, and not only how it changes you, but how you change the world that you step into just by, your presence and what you bring to the table. So yeah, she reached out. That's how I found out. And I was so grateful, because it came like, it was like a, voice from the universe saying, no, just keep doing what you do. It's going to be okay. And I was very, very grateful.
That's awesome. How I do want to talk. Oh, actually, let me just say this for people watching who are watching us live. If you have any questions, you please type them into either Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching, and we will share them before the end of the program at 8:00. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I do want to talk about the exhibit that's coming up. I know that it starts on Saturday, and the theme of the exhibit, or actually, Maribel, you said for the full year, but specifically this project is awakening, transforming experiences. And so I'm sort of hoping we can have a bit of a roundtable conversation about that theme. And so first of all, maybe Maribel, you can talk about how you chose it, or what your vision is. And then I'd love to hear from each of the artists, like what what do you see in your own work, and if there's healing in your work and you are transforming as you do your work, as it relates to this theme, how does that impact your art? So that's kind of, I'm giving you a two-part question. The artist can think about it. Well, Maribel, you can talk to us about how you came to this.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share. It was actually a process, believe it or not. It started with reflecting on Manju and Salome's work, because Salome was the first, and Manju were the first two artists interested in being a part of the 2022-23 exhibit. And I haven't really heard back from the others as much. So I said, all right, it's the three of us, and we're going to conquer the world, and we're going to create something. And so the theme was really first started by looking at their work, and then we realized there was some patterns there, and that gave us the inspiration for the word catharsis. So I was going to go with catharsis and say, okay, let's do something similar to what we did in 2020. But in that time, 2020 was COVID-19. When we were looking at catharsis, we were going through a potential nuclear war. We were going through just a series of massive social ills just coming to a breaking point. We were seeing the effects of what people dealing with not having employment for a while, and losing their checks. There was just a series of social ills, and we thought we needed to do something like that again, that had this element of catharsis, but the word catharsis didn't feel right. So we were ready to roll with it, and I got some feedback from some artists from Love for Immigrants, some new artists that I met, who liked our work. I liked their work, and I actually spent about 5 months creating my own work around the theme catharsis, and to almost empathize with the artist, because I hadn't been doing my art in a while. And I basically won like a special seat with another group that works with immigrant and refugees. And I said, hey, I'm an immigrant too, in a way, work with me. And so I used that theme of catharsis to heal my own traumas and to work in my own way with the what is called integrating my identities and myself, and which is hard. And I said, maybe this process will help me figure out where the theme needs to go. So it was a very in-depth way of working with a theme that I've never done before. And the person who worked with me is very knowledgeable, also an artist and curator. And she gave me some feedback. She comes from a different culture than mine, and said, this word is not going to work. Another artist said this word also is not going to work. It's too, not every person, every education level, and every culture uses this word. So we had some recommendations for what does it really mean when you think about it. And what it means to a lot of us is that we're awakening. We're going through this kind of awakening of something. And then we said, okay, what is it awakening? For me, it was awakening my emotions to process them, but it's not the case for everyone. And some people pointed out that assumption, right? And said, hey, some people awaken in their thinking, they awake in their spirit, they awake in politically, to make a difference. They awake. There's so many ways of awakening, and it could go on and on. And so we said, all right, awakening experiences, because each one of those is an experience. Whether you had an experience that changed you forever, life-changing experience, and now you're a new person, and doing some great work out there trying to help the world, or whether it was a simple, I'm awakening to the fact that I have a lot of anger, and I have to work on that, because if I don't, I'm going to go out there and start snapping at people all the time, right? Because we do that. And so that theme, it was very involved. That's how it happened.
That's great. You did say before we began that we could talk for a long time, and there is so much about this that I want to keep being able to keep talking about. For you, Xenia, how back to that sort of second part of the question is, as you look at awakening, transforming experiences, if you have healing through your work or transformation, how does that play out? Oh, you're muted.
It's a story of my life. No, so art is one of the biggest sources for me, not sources, ways to express my emotions, because culturally, and the way I grew up in an environment where, it's not culturally accepted or to express your emotions. Russia is a completely different culture, and especially if I look at my childhood, I was bullied a lot as a child,
Mm.
for my look, because I don't look Russian, I don't look Slavic, I look more Middle Eastern. So during the time when I was growing up, I was bullied and I was called Chechen. Well, I don't know if you guys know what Chechen
Mhm,
is.
mhm,
A
mhm.
country that we were in war after Soviet Union collapsed. So, and to be called a Chechen, it was very, very offensive. So I was called a Chechen, a terrorist, and I was a very sensitive child. So as a lot of artists are. I mean, we're very sensitive. And the thing is, like, it's not like nobody really in my household was asking me how I was feeling, or it just was never really the case. So I never really had like a tight or close connection to my parents. Not that they didn't love me, it's just my mom believed that showing vulnerability, uh, or too much affection to a child might cause them to grow up weak,
Mm,
which is so opposite. I know it's for Americans, it sounds absolutely crazy, but this is how it is. And I don't know, Manju, I'm sure you have similar experience, because in our countries it's not like here where everybody talks about their feelings, everybody gets offended easily. This is not like that. Like, I mean, nobody's gonna ask you whether you were offended by that or not. Everybody's direct, and um so, which caused me to grow up in a certain way. And what happened is, for me to show my emotions, it's really difficult for me to verbalize this. Like, I can't even like define and verbalize my emotions, right? So, and
mhm,
now I can, but that's because I've done a lot of work on myself, and a lot of healing work, right? So, and if you look at my art is deeply personal. Like, if you look at that, it has this kind of like a melancholic feel to it. But that's because, again, like, I don't really show my emotions much.
mhm,
Melancholic emotions, negative, right?
mhm,
So that's why a lot of that comes out in my art. Not that my art is negative, but it does have this kind of like this melancholic, kind of feel to it. Um, so for me, it's the way to express my emotions. Like, I express it through art. I might not be able to verbalize it well, but for me, art is the way to show it. I basically paint myself.
mhm, mhm,
So do a lot of artists. I mean,
mhm,
a lot of artists do paint themselves. And when I say myself, my emotions, right? So, and the reason, like, there are no faces is because my emotions don't really show on my face.
mhm, mhm.
So I don't express it on my in my face. So that's
Did this for you, like that style, was
Mhm.
it intentional and deliberate, or did it develop over time? And as you were doing it, you realized what was happening?
With my style, it's so interesting. It's such a very interesting story, like how it came out, right? So the thing is, like, I was painting since I was a child, and I went to very strict art school in Siberia. Then I continued my education in St. Petersburg. So I did a lot of like studies of anatomy, things like that. And um, but I was never happy with my art. The thing is, like, yes, everything was like anatomically proportional. Everything is, like, like, you can see there is some kind of art education. uh but I was never happy with my style, because I was just painting people just as a matter of fact.
Mm,
There is a person, there is a portrait, and there is really nothing really much else. My style, it kind of came to me, kind of my style found me, and not I found my style, in it during my meditation.
mm,
Honestly, I was I was not participating in any exhibitions because I was not happy with my artwork. And then once I actually moved to DC, that's when I because when I moved to DC, I went through a huge transformation myself. I went through some kind of existential crisis that was caused by a lot of my personal life. Um, so and I started doing a lot of things, meditation. I started doing therapy. So it was I had a horrible year in 2019. My mom passed away, and I went through divorce. There were a lot of things happened. So and I kind of changed. A lot of things changed in me, and I did discover meditation, and it kind of came to me. Like I saw a picture in my head during meditation, and I knew immediately before I even painted that that's what it is. That's what I was looking for. That's what I'm supposed to do. So the thing is, with me, my style coincided with me finding myself. So as soon as I found who I was, that's when the style kind of it just came naturally to me.
Thank you. And
So that really resonates for me because so when I immigrated to the United States, I'm the only child in an immigrant household. And as you can imagine, there were some very clear career expectations of me, some very clear social expectations of me, you know. And I mean, I painted profusely as a child. And then, when we moved here, I was also an Indian classical dancer. All of that stuff stopped. Like it had to stop because we were living in a tiny studio apartment and my job was very clear. I had to be financially stable enough that I would be able to take care of my siblings and, help my mother out. And so art was just gone. Like that, there was no way, me wanting to study international affairs was rebellion enough. I remember coming home and saying, oh, I want to, be a diplomat. And I remember I may as well have said I want to be an astronaut or, I want to be, it just was unthinkable. And to be fair, very reasonable on some level, because at work, I'm often the only woman in the room. I'm often the only person of color in the room. And I'm very much the only woman of color in the room so many times. And it's ridiculous because it's today, and it's a place like DC where you have it's not exactly in the middle of the 17th century in a Western town, right? Like this is our capital, and for me, it was only after both my parents passed away and my siblings were launched, right? Like they had their own lives, they were taken care of. It's only then that I picked up a paintbrush again. It was also then that I went back to a yoga practice. My mother was a yoga teacher. I grew up with yoga, but had a really difficult time practicing yoga here in the United States because the way it's practiced here is really oddly industrialized. And I grew up with a very different, very spiritual tradition of yoga. And that came together. So I would practice and I would meditate and I would be like, I would see things that I then wanted to paint. And I would do one of those paint and sip nights, where I would paint stuff and then I would put it up in my office and someone would walk by the office and say, oh, I love that piece. So then I would take it down and hand it to them. And then I would put up another piece and then somebody else would come by and say, oh, I love that piece. And I would say, oh, cool. It's resonating with you. Here you go. Here's a piece for you. That's, that's how it came, right? Like it came back as I was becoming more comfortable with my own spirituality. And like the three pieces that have ended up in this particular exhibit are really capsules of three very big transformative things. So one of the pieces is about depression and sadness and what that feels like. And to even say that, I mean, I remember going to after a really terrible assault situation, being told at graduate school to go see a therapist. And I went and saw a therapist. And then when I came home for Thanksgiving break, I remember saying to my family, like, oh, after that thing happened, yeah, I've gone to 2 sessions of therapy, and I'm really excited that I'm going to go back to a third one. And it was awful. It was like I had said, I'm murdering babies while I'm at graduate school. Like, it was just like, how can you go to therapies for crazy people? My God, what if people find out about this? What if, it's such a like shameful thing and so stigmatized. Just saying, hi, I have emotions, and that I'm not stoic all the time. And I mean, in my culture, women are just supposed to smile and be there. You're supposed to take care of everything, but you're not supposed to want recognition for it. I joke about how no matter what I did in my career, I only became okay in my family once I had a child. It just didn't matter. Yeah, it didn't matter. Anything else I did was just nothing, And I know if I had been born a boy, it would have been a very different thing. I also recognize that this came from a place of need, right? Like, my mother needed me to get serious about certain things. She needed me to be financially stable. And this idea that I had the gall, like some rich, spoiled New Yorker, that complains in the movies, to go get therapy. It was just considered so self-indulgent and also shameful. So one of the pieces was about that. Another piece it's called A Prod Crime. Your clothes were asking for it. Because my whole life I have been told how to dress, to be safe, to be, appealing, to not, to be pretty, like that I have to like be a certain weight, act a certain way, color my nails a certain color. And there was a level of rebellion after my parents passed where I'm like, I like my gray hair. I refuse to color it. I don't care if, my family thinks it makes me look older and it's going to be embarrassing for my child. I'm like, all their construct, not mine. And it's more than that, right? Like, I remember when I was assaulted in graduate school, the first question I got, not just from my family and people from my culture, but the first question I got was, well, what were you wearing? I realized coming to the United States, especially, between like 2019 and 2022, that like, oh, you can be killed for wearing a sweatshirt. Like, I think so long and hard about what I wear and what I would step out of the house in, because I need to look respectable, because otherwise I'm viewed a certain way and then I'm putting myself in danger. So the second piece was very much about taking that back, of saying, no, these are just my clothes. Like, my clothes weren't asking for anything. They're just clothes. But I know that on different people, they take on different values. And I really wanted to speak up about that. And then the last piece was, that is the piece that has the kintsugi shards of pottery. First of all, I love the idea of kintsugi. I love this idea that, when you have broken pottery, rather than hiding the scar, you highlight the scar, and you acknowledge that this object has been through something, and that it is still useful and it is still used. And you're not trying to hide it. You're not trying to you don't throw it away. You don't hide the flaw. I have a child with a chronic illness, and something about looking at the scars on her body, as a mother, you just feel responsible. Like, my genetic makeup did this, it took a lot. There was something very meditative about fixing pieces to put them together and not hiding the cracks. And that piece that is in the exhibit, I mean, I did it right as, as an immigrant, you realize you are told that it's the United States of America. And when you come to America, you realize there's nothing united about the state. And that there is no, and that there's no effort to, there's no effort to understand the other side, or to, to like, we move so much in this country, but we don't. Like, we go from one construct to the same construct that we feel comfortable in, even though there's so much diversity around us. Even as immigrants, I felt like, I was expected to hang out with other Indian kids. And if I made friends with Pakistani or Bangladeshi kids, I had to do that in hiding. If I dated someone who was Black, I had to really explain that. Well, I wasn't allowed to date, but like, heaven forbid, if I got caught, I would just be, dead meat. It's things like that. And I thought, so much for the United States, like, we're so fragmented that there's nothing united about this. But at the same time, I hope that we can be connected and joined together. And these flaws and lines of tension can actually be sources of strength for us to have compassion towards each other. And I don't think I would have used, the idea of compassion for others or myself a couple of years ago. I would have been like, oh, I need to be tougher. Having compassion for myself was synonymous in my culture for feeling sorry for myself. And that's not that I'm allowed to have the luxury of. So owning those scars, owning my own femininity, and owning my mental health, those were some very, very, and owning my spirituality, that I have a spirituality. Those were really, really big and fairly recent things. It's not something that, I would have talked about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. That's powerful. I know we are a little bit over time, but I'm hoping that you can indulge me. We did get a question from a viewer that I think is so appropriate for what we're talking about right now. And I'm hoping we can have this final question, and maybe each of you could talk about it. I know, Maribel, you're also an artist, and I'd really like to hear from your point of view. That the question is as you're painting or creating your art, do you find that you're feeling emotionally exposed? And I think, Rhonda, you just shared so openly about, your experiences. And if you do feel emotionally exposed, are there words that you can give to other artists who feel the same on how to work through it? And maybe we could start with you, Maribel, just because I know we haven't got a chance to talk about your art yet. I'd like to hear what you think about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think similarly to a lot of people here, the other artists here, I felt like expressing my emotions and my trauma growing up in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, when it wasn't so great. And I mean, we have a lot of great people, so don't get me wrong, don't start stereotyping. But there were things like, you could get raped by the L train, or you can, be careful because like they're breaking glass in the cars, so you could get hurt that way, or you hear gunshot here and there. There's just so many things. So I've been doing art since forever, since daycare. Like, let's go. Like, everything creative was my thing. And I had teachers who were kind of my saviors, like my art teachers growing up in middle school. I had a photography teacher, and I had a art teacher that would wake up super early so I can be there 7:30 in the morning and do art. And so, here I am, I'm choosing it as a career. And after all this, like doing art, I went to art high school too, as a way to just explore and get better, but also heal. And I don't know any of this. I'm thinking I'm just becoming a great artist. I realized that part of why I've never really exhibited work outside of like university setting, my university that I went to, or like Ayuda, because it was a cause, so I could be brave to do it for a cause. It's because it's vulnerable. It's very vulnerable. You're sharing a piece of yourself, and you're sharing people who are also part of that journey, especially if your art is about people. And so it's a very delicate place, and it takes courage to share.
Thank you. What about for you, Zinja?
So as I'm reading a question, if I find that I feel emotionally exposed when I paint, yes, I mean, my paint, but that's why I paint. Because in person, I'm not really best at expressing that. So that's why I paint, because it needs to go somewhere, right? So we all have our outlets. Some people write, some people they express better with words. I express it with art. Uh, Being afraid to be exposed. Well, think about it this way. I would say in our modern world, full of, I don't know, technology and people maybe not connecting enough, people really are longing for that something personal, some kind of connection. The more you expose your own personal story, the more success you're gonna have. I see it all the time, everywhere. And you can start small. You don't have to expose all of you and go all in with your emotions. But I mean, as far as I can see, when I started exhibiting my art, it's really that's what people really appreciate. That's what they want. They want to see that emotion, and you're gonna get so much support for it, and you're gonna get more and more comfortable with exposing your emotions through art.
Manju?
I also found that one, the amount I would judge before I put it out there, and like I would make these paintings, and then they would just sit there in hiding because, I don't want anybody to see my angst. I don't want anybody to see me handling trauma. I need to be seen a certain way. But I real I joke about how I came out as an artist. Like I had to be dragged out of the art closet. It was literally friends going, "Oh, look at this wonderful painting Mons you gave me," and I would be like, "Shh, shh, don't tell people I paint." And I'm not sure why. Like why I was so terrified. But the thing that makes it worthwhile is sometimes I'll put a piece out there and someone will reach out and talk to me about. So I had this piece at an exhibit that's called "When a Great Tree Falls." It's from that Maya Angelou poem, and it was basically just me mourning my mother-in-law's death, and how even though the tree was gone, the roots were still there and feeding other things and feeding other. So I put it up there, and um, it was amazing to have the people who would tell me what that piece meant to them and how they were processing grief. Or, when I'll put a kintsugi piece together and talk about the philosophy of it's okay to have the scar. Every scar tells a battle story of survival, and that is okay. It's been that connection, and knowing, and this is why I'm so like committed to doing smaller pieces that everyone can afford, because I love when someone says, this piece spoke to me. This piece spoke to me about my grief, or this piece spoke to me about my shame, or this piece spoke to me about, being traumatized, being ashamed to be traumatized, to admit that there was trauma. This piece spoke to me about feeling unhappy about how I was being treated, and having the voice for that. That makes it worth it. It doesn't, I mean, for me, it hasn't gotten less terrifying. But every time I'm like, I don't know if I want to put this piece up. It's the same song and dance. I've got a bunch of pieces here that I hid because I'm not ready to like share. And it's all because it's not because they're not done. It's because I'm not sure if I want to talk about that. I'm too scared to talk about that. But, you end up forming not just connections with people, but you end up helping them just because you acknowledge your own pain. It gives them the courage to acknowledge their pain and sort of express it in their own amazing ways. Because I think everybody creates art in, like Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, right? Like we all show our art and show that artistic urge differently. And for me, it may be on canvas or it may be with porcelain, but maybe for you, it's a song that you hum or a story that you tell your kid, or, or a garden that you plant. it's that gratitude and love that you get when people are like, yeah, thanks, that's exactly how that felt at that moment. That makes the scariness worth it, not go away, but worth it.
Thank you. This has been, I mean, we've gone way over you. So first of all, thank you, all three of you, for staying with us and for being here. I do want to just remind viewers that there is a wonderful exhibit coming up. It opens on Saturday, April 1st. The opening is from 3 to 5. It is at Home Gallery, which is, I'm just pulling this up, it is at 2000 L Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Again, it opens on Saturday from 3 to 5. It is open for 1 week. There is a link in your chat, wherever you're watching, on Facebook or YouTube, that links directly to the exhibit page from Love for Immigrants. I've also shared links with the Love for Immigrants directly with Xenia's Instagram. So please follow her, see her work, see what's happening. And then also to Manju's webpage. You all have been absolutely amazing. It has been a real honor. It's been a complete honor to have you. And thank you so much. You'll be hearing from me because I want to keep talking to you all. So thank you so much, Maribel, for everything that you've done in creating this project.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone listening, and find your art. I think everyone's an artist in some way. And if you find like painting and photography is not your jam, then find the thing that is. Like for me now, it's social enterprise and trying to create a project that's doing good, and I have more courage showcasing this type of art and fighting for it than I do for my own art. But for you, it might be something else. It might be raising a child in the best possible way you think that is. It might be just helping a school out, donating to a cause, like whatever it is that you do well, do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to have to close. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and please go check out the art show starting on Saturday at Home Gallery. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.